Good morning. Welcome to Ask Me Anything. This is another in a series of live discussions sponsored by Salt Lake City. We take timely topics and discuss them with our experts here working for the city. Today we're discussing all things drought and wildfire risk and prevention, which I know is on everybody's minds right now. My name is Holly Mullen. I'm the Communications and Engagement Manager for the Salt Lake City Department of Public Utilities, and I'm the host today. It's my pleasure to introduce you briefly to our participants. First off, we have Stephanie Dewar. Stephanie is our Water Conservation Program Manager for Public Utilities. Stephanie has been with the city for just over 20 years and is very much an expert on drought, water shortages, conservation measures, water-wise gardening, just a lot of experience in those areas. Welcome, Stephanie. Next, we have Luke Allen. Luke is Community Outreach and Marketing Manager for Public Lands in Salt Lake City. Of course, public lands are very much about what we're discussing today, conservation and, of course, risks of fire. So we want to keep those open lands protected and continue to be loved. Welcome, Luke. And finally, we have Salt Lake City Fire Marshal Tony Allred. Marshal Allred has been with the city fire department for 25 years. He was appointed to head up the Fire Prevention Bureau just in March of this year. The Fire Prevention Bureau is responsible for several important elements of the fire department, including fire investigations, causes of fire, as well as the Fire Prevention Bureau. Welcome, Marshal Allred. So I think we'll just start out with Stephanie Dewar. We'd just like to give some brief information about each of our areas of expertise, and then would be very much open to comments and questions from our audience. Stephanie, what can you tell us about everything you know about conservation?
Well, that would be a lot, but or there's a lot of things to cover in conservation. But I think what is really important right now is to understand that what we're in is a serious drought. It's affecting the entire state. It's either extreme or severe, and it's actually affecting the entire Intermountain West and Pacific Northwest. In a moment, I'll share a screen with you that shows images of that. But the other part of it is that during this drought, we all have the tools and strategies we need to get through this if we all work together and we all do the right thing. And this isn't just a residential issue, it's also our commercial, industrial, and institutional partners really need to help us achieve very significant water use reductions so that we can not only stay within our current water supply levels, but we also need to make certain that we keep as much water in our reservoirs and store it as possible, because we don't know what this coming year will bring in terms of snowpack. So it's very important that we're not only thinking about how we use water now, but our water supply into the future. So let me just share something with you. And hopefully this will all go well here. Can everyone see my screen? Excellent. So what this is just a slide that shows our current average precipitation and temperature. And as you can see, Utah is here sort of in the middle. The entire Intermountain West and Pacific Northwest is affected. The reason I'm showing this as opposed to one of just Utah is much of our water supply comes from the Colorado River Basin, at least 30% of it or so, 20 to 30. So that the fact that this drought is so far reaching has implications for us. The other thing I want to share is this slide. Now, every single day, the folks here at Public Utilities measure, monitor, and assess water supply. We also do a lot of other things with water in terms of water quality and such, but we're not chatting about that today. But what I notice, so every single day I look at how much water people demand. And it's not just people, it's also industries, commercial facilities, government buildings, anyone who opens a tap anywhere within our service area, which by the way includes Salt Lake City, Cottonwood Heights, Mill Creek, Holiday, and portions of Murray, South and North Salt Lake, we measure how much water is being demanded that day. And if you look at this chart, we were in the beginning of the season using more water than we did on the average in the last 3 years. Now, it was particularly hot and dry, so it's sort of not surprising, but also that we're entering a drought. Even if it's hot and dry, we just can't afford to use that much water. However, people started listening more to the messages here around end of May into early part of June. And then the last couple of days when we had this sort of, if you can call it 90-degree weather, a cool snap, that's exactly what we experienced, and a little bit of rain. So we've seen a really good dip in water usage. What we need to do as a community is stay under this line. So everyone needs to do all summer long what we've done in the last 4 days in terms of water use. Now, we published this chart on our website page, and also periodically we're sending it out in tweets and Instagram and Facebook. So I'm going to exit this. Yay, and I stopped sharing. I'm so excited. So really the important messages here is we all need to think about how we use water, not just outdoors, but indoors as well. And that this is something we all have to participate in, regardless of whether you're a homeowner or an apartment dweller or a business or a manufacturer. Everyone needs to help us reduce water use right now.
Thanks, Stephanie. Let's move on to Luke and get a brief background of what you're involved in right now, Luke. Thanks.
Thank you, Holly. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well here. So I'm just going to take 4 or 5 minutes and talk briefly about some of the key things that each of our 4 public lands divisions are doing to conserve water and help mitigate the risk of wildfires during this drought. We're doing a lot of different things, so I won't be able to talk about everything, but I will just run through a few highlights very quickly. So I'll start with our Parks Division. Our Parks Division has adopted a survive, not thrive mentality. And we acknowledge that that'll lead to a lot of yellow and brown lawns in some areas of our parks, but we understand that that's okay. That's, a yellow lawn doesn't necessarily mean that the lawn is dead. It will recover. And as part of that, we've also committed to limit water use to stay within water use budgets that have been established in partnership with the Public Utilities Department. And as another highlight of something that we've done to try to conserve water is we've set the Liberty Park splash pad on a reduced schedule of noon to 6 p.m. daily, whereas in a typical year, that schedule would have been from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Next, our Golf Division. Our Golf Division is reducing water use by 5 to 10%, especially in non-essential play areas like driving ranges, practice areas, and out-of-play areas. Our Urban Forestry Division doesn't use a lot of water in their normal day-to-day operations compared to our Golf and Parks divisions, for example, but they are coordinating with the Parks Division to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of tree watering practices on city properties. And they also work with residents. They've been consulting with city residents on specific water options and instructions to preserve trees while conserving water during the drought. Our final division is the Trails and Natural Lands Division. A lot of their properties don't have irrigation systems, so they're also a division that doesn't use quite as much water in their normal day-to-day operations. However, they are supporting the separation of tree and shrub and grass watering zones for all irrigation systems, which allows future flexibility in watering in cases of drought. And they're also supporting the establishment of biodiverse native species in natural areas and restoration sites to enhance climate resilience of the Salt Lake City public land system overall. Next, I want to quickly talk about the main thing we've been doing within public lands in terms of wildfire mitigation. In partnership with the city's facilities division, our crews over the last few weeks have been cutting back weeds and dry vegetation to create fire breaks in certain areas around the city. Specific examples of areas we've done that are around the Memorial House and Ottinger Hall in the Memory Grove area, as well as above the area above Lindsay Gardens, just as some examples. And finally, because we have representatives from public utilities as well as public lands on this panel, I think it would be helpful to briefly explain where the line is between what public lands manages and what public utilities manages. You can see on this map shows the public lands inventory. So The green areas on this map represent the urban trees. The blue areas on the map are either golf courses or parks. The yellow lines are our trails, and the red areas are our natural areas that we manage within public lands. So you'll notice that we don't do a lot within public lands up the watershed canyons. That falls on public utilities more to manage those properties, which does include several locations that are used for recreation. So I just think that context might be helpful as we move on to the later parts of this discussion. So that's all I'll share for now, but I look forward to answering your questions later on.
Thank you, Luke. Now we'll go to Fire Marshal Allred. I'll bet you're going to talk a little bit about fireworks and the 4th of July and all the other things that come with it.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Holly. That is one of the things I want to talk about. Obviously, we've been a little bit in the news lately with some large fires here in the Valley, and the fireworks and recreational fires ban that was announced by the mayor and Chief Lee and signed by me. I just wanted to give our residents a little bit of background on kind of how we came to the conclusions that we did, and what kind of information fed into our analysis of the situation in the city from the fire department standpoint, especially when we've referred to it as a tinderbox situation in our announcements. We worked with several agencies. I know we worked closely with Watershed as the summer developed, and our own crews and our own what we call wildland urban interface experts. When we look at, and we do this analysis every year, when we look at what we think the wildfire risk is in the city. Obviously, one of the big reasons we look at wildfire risk is, one, the impact on the watershed, the impact on our public resources, the impact on our fire resources and our ability to respond to all the other emergencies we address, and the fact that wildland fires become structure fires. That's what we know from around the country. I mean, I don't have to tell anybody that. We all watch the news and see what happens around the country. And it's happened in the Valley, unfortunately. Some of our residents might remember some of the large fires that we had even last year. Capitol Hill, the west side, up on our east side above Redview Gardens. These are, resource intensive fires that we've managed to stave off significant structure loss to this point, but there have been a lot of close calls. And so that's the kind of background we bring to look at what's going on this year. And after our analysis of looking at what's going on this year, I won't rehash what Stephanie, especially, and Luke were able to explain about just how the drought has affected the fuels and the dryness. And like I said, it resulted in a tinderbox situation. We don't want wildfires to turn into structure fires in this city. That has a significant, devastating impact on our citizens. And so that's the objective. We're also unique in that what many don't realize is that we have a lot of what we call wild urban interfaces areas right down through the core of our city. The Jordan River Parkway is a great asset and a unique asset to our city. But when I step back and put my firefighter hat on, what I see is large fuels, large, very dry fuels running through the center of our city. And these are dangers not only to the homes abutting these areas, but what we've seen from the fire behavior in other communities where we've sent crews. We get the ember deposition, and in a wind-fueled fire, create structure fires long distances from where the actual flame fronts are in our wildland areas. And so that's the kind of scope we bring when we look at the risks. And so, as you mentioned, we're talking about fireworks. That brought us to what we felt we needed to do to enact a citywide fireworks and recreational fires ban. This fire ban, this ignition source ban, applies to all consumer fireworks. There are still sales in the city. You just can't fire them off in the city. And then recreational fires are included in that. Recreational fires, as defined by the fire code, but basically, to really narrow it down for people and make it simple, it's open burning. campfires, outside fires, obviously rubbish fires, those types of things. I'm not trying to tell people they can't cook hot dogs on the 4th of July on their barbecue grill, but we're not going to be able to have any tolerance for any types of open fires in this tinderbox situation. We're eager to hear from the community. We're eager to answer questions from the community because it does bring up a lot of what if situations. Our main message out now is that we're going to rely on the community to kind of keep us apprised of dangerous situations as they evolve over the holiday weekends coming up, both the 4th of July and 24th of July. I'm going to throw the number out there again. 801-799-3000 is our non-emergency line. We will have crews responding to every reported fire, regardless of the size. And we will have additional enforcement out there for our fire ban that's been announced. Thanks.
Just quickly, Marshall, already, and I think it's important, we want people to call that non-emergency number, but unless they, I imagine, see a fire really going, they want to call 911, right? What's the of the difference of those two?
The difference is they both those lines are handled by Salt Lake City 911. You're going to get to a dispatcher. They're going to address your problem. The difference is basically, is it an emergency? The difference between the 799-3000 line is that you're not tying up, you're not getting in front of somebody, that's been in a car accident or is witnessing another fire or a crime in progress. If you're using that 799-3000 line, you might hold a little bit, but like I said, if it's you see someone readying to fire off fireworks or shooting off fireworks, but it hasn't caused a fire or something yet, please use that non-emergency line. Obviously, if you see a fire doubles in size every minute, we're eager to get there. We have good response times. We want you to use the regular 911 line for any fire you're concerned about.
We're getting questions already that apply to all three of you, but I think since we started with fire, we'll just continue for a minute with Marshall Allred. We have a question, what should residents do in the event of a wildfire? How can they prepare for wildfire?
If you go to our website, Salt Lake City Fire, we run a program called Ready, Set, Go. We put it out as door hanger information and then obviously on the website. And Ready, Set, Go is, we'll walk you through, how to be ready for an anticipated evacuation, what you can do to be set, what have a plan is what to bring with you. And then if you do need to go, if the fire department moves into your community, like we have in some of our neighborhoods and say, we want residents to evacuate, we want to do that safely and orderly. So one, it's safe for everybody leaving the neighborhood. You have the things you need for a little while, and that you're not interfering with responding emergency vehicles. And so it'll walk you through those steps. Much like we say with home evacuations in the case of a house fire, it's good to have a plan. If you're asked to leave your home and have to evacuate in front of a wildland urban interface event, we don't want it to be the first time you've thought about it. It really will help with the stress of the situation if you just have a plan. If you have already decided what are those things I'm going to grab, where can I go, those types of things. So that's the number one thing I would advise people. And they can go to the Salt Lake City Fire website and be directed to those resources.
Thank you. And again, it's great because everything seems to dovetail with all of your areas of expertise. A question that would go to Stephanie here. What can residents do to help during these drought conditions? And on the same level, what about businesses? Start with residents and businesses, would you?
Certainly. The first thing to do is just be mindful about how you use water, whether it's indoors or out. Use it with intention. Don't leave faucets running when you're not using it. If you're washing your hands, rinsing dishes, whatever the activity is, have the water on when you're using it, but shut it off when you're not actively using it. Out of doors, right now, though it's not a mandate within our service area, we are asking everyone to not water more often than twice a week. your lawn will not die. It might get a little gold, that's it going dormant, and that's perfectly okay. That's what cool season grass does under normal conditions. That will go a long way to helping us reduce our water footprint right now. And those are very big actions. As far as commercial and industrial and institutional customers, they can do the exact same things. One is if they have landscapes, only water twice a week. Don't water so long that you have runoff or overspray. Be really prompt in fixing sprinkler issues like broken spray heads, and don't allow spray heads to go out over sidewalks and things like that. Also, for people going back to the workplace, let your boss or the building manager or facilities manager know if you see a leak in your building, in your office place or workplace, and help your workplace be really mindful and timely about addressing those concerns and getting them fixed. You can also let me know when you see a problem, and I call every single property owner or customer when we have a complaint and work with them to help them to change their behavior. One last quick thing you can do if you're a homeowner or a business is you can get a water check. They're free, and it's a program in partnership with Utah State University and the Metropolitan Water District of Salt Lake and Sandy. And trained interns come out and assess your irrigation system and give you a bullet list of what to do to make the system better. And those are free. And you can find information about that on our website.
Thanks, Stephanie. I know the water check program has been really successful. A lot of people are interested in that. I was going to jump back to Luke Allen for a second and ask for your perspective on public lands and wildfire, Luke.
Yeah, in terms of public lands and wildfires, we have a lot of properties up on the foothills, especially, and like Fire Marshal already mentioned, along the Jordan River Trail, where there are those areas that do have a high potential for wildfires. And of course, within public lands, we don't necessarily have the resources to create fire breaks everywhere, but I know our fire department is well aware of where those risks are particularly high. And just like we've said, in the event of any type of emergency, we rely on the public to keep us aware of where those things are happening. And we really appreciate the fire department's help, responding to all of those and consulting with us on how to best deal with those locations that are very high risk. And I'd also like to touch a little bit on the other question you asked, Holly, about what the public can do to help during these drought conditions. Like Stephanie mentioned, it's really important to make sure sprinkler systems are working properly. And then across all of our parks and our public lands, we have a lot of irrigation systems, and it's inevitable that there will be issues. Sprinkler heads will break, or pipes will break, or drinking fountains or park restrooms will leak. And users of our open spaces spend a lot more time in the spaces than our park staff. So we really need the help from the community to report those issues as soon as you see them. If you notice that there's a sprinkler head that's spraying onto a parking lot or onto a sidewalk, or that's just shooting water straight up in the air, please let us know by calling 801-972-7800, and we can send our crews out as soon as possible to deal with those situations. Like I said, there will be things like that happen this summer during the drought, and we want to respond to those as fast as possible. And oftentimes it'll be a member of the public who's the first person to see those. So yeah, that's just one of the best things that residents can do to help during this drought.
Thank you. Yeah, and I was just going to add, as a representative of the Public Utilities Department, we've been working especially hard these last couple of weeks with the fire department in our City Creek Canyon safety. I don't know that a lot of people know that is prime watershed. It's managed by Salt Lake City for our drinking water that comes out of the City Creek treatment plant. That's the primary purpose of City Creek Canyon in terms of serving the city for water treatment. But thankfully, it's a lovely recreation place as well. So we have a definite coexistence with people who want to use it for biking and picnicking and hiking and all the beautiful things that we love about Salt Lake. But it is extremely dry right now, and we are going to be handing out brochures to cars that come up there on the even days. Even a car could set off a spark, I believe, Fire Marshal Allen or Allred, pardon me. And we just want people to be aware. Those are prime fire boxes, tinder boxes right now. So it takes everybody to help us out with all of these issues. I have another question here for Stephanie. How do I report an improper water usage, like during the really hot hours of the day, or broken sprinkler heads that I see when I'm out in the neighborhoods?
Folks are welcome to either call or email me. My email address is stephanie.doer@slcgov.com. My phone number, my desk is 801-483-6860. And so you're welcome to call. Please leave a detailed message and be specific. If you witness a broken spray head, for instance, or water midday, if you can provide an address or the name of if it's a building or office, the name of the place, and exactly what you see, that's really helpful for when I call the property owner. So yeah, and then we also have City Sourced, which is a mobile app you can upload on your Android or your Apple phone, and you can use it to report a number of issues. So whether it's something you witness at a city park, or if you see graffiti, or if you want to make a water report, the City Sourced app can be really helpful. And those messages are then directed to specific city staff to address, and depending on what the report is. And I get all the water complaints, so.
And she's good about answering them, I promise. Also, Stephanie, we've shown pictures. Luke showed some pretty dramatic photos of how the city is working to cut back on water.
Mhm.
And yeah, we are getting some brown spots on our grass. How long can someone's grass go before it's damaged from lack of water?
That's a
Is there
great
def-
question. Yeah. Actually, you could water as little as 1 inch a month, which would be maybe 2 waterings a month to keep your lawn alive. Now, the one thing though lawns get a bad rap in terms of being water hogs, lawn really isn't the problem. It's our relationship to lawn. It's the lawn we choose, and it's what we expect it to look like all the time, and it's how we water it. If we chose grasses that made more sense for our climate and watered them appropriately, we probably wouldn't be quite in the dire situation we are in right now. But if you wanted to just keep your lawn alive, watering it twice a month is adequate. And I do want to give a shout out to, since Salt Lake City provides water to also these other communities, we're also working very closely with the parks and recreation groups in Cottonwood Heights, Mill Creek, Holiday, and the Cottonwood Heights Recreation District. And they're also doing the same thing. So they're cutting back on their water use on all the facilities. We're making lawn signs that we're going to be putting out on all of our public facilities throughout our service area, and the state and county agents facilities as well, to let people know that we're all participating in this. But honestly, to just survive your lawn, 2 waterings a month. Be mindful to water your trees. Now they may, depending on the species, may need water once a week, or maybe twice a month. So it's good to know what kind of trees you have in your yard, and it's important to maintain them because it's harder to replace them. Lawn's pretty easy to replace. As a matter of fact, we're going to be launching a seed program in mid-August, and we'll be selling a low water grass seed to folks in our service area. And that's a pretty exciting opportunity. It uses 30 to 40% less water than the typical lawn in our area. So watch the website for bulletins.
Yeah, that's really cool. I remember hearing about this, but it'll be offered through our department, or will it be like at the gardening stores and that kind of thing too?
No, this is a grass seed that we will be offering directly through the utility, like we sell rain barrels. It was developed for us in conjunction with Utah State University and the Turfgrass Water Conservation Alliance, which is a consortium of turfgrass producers and turf researchers throughout the country. And they've been working for decades to identify lower water grasses for all over the country. And I reached out to them and asked them to help us identify more appropriate grasses for our area. And they came up with a blend specifically for us. They've provided it at cost. We'll be selling it at cost. And you don't even have to remove your lawn to plant it. But we won't be making it for sale until about early to mid-August, because we want to get through the heat of the summer before we're telling people to water a little bit every day for that long-term savings.
Thank you. We have a question here that's interesting because I think it reflects how universal and wide these issues are that we're talking about today, and not just Salt Lake City, but of course the entire state, the country, even the world. Chris is asking why climate change and dairy and alfalfa farming are absent from drought frequently asked questions. He feels that we might be painting an incomplete picture of the drought without mentioning these other causes and challenges with water shortages. Anyone want to take that one on?
Sure. So part of my responsibility as the water conservation manager is to help our service area develop its drought plan. Our last drought plan was written in 2004. We're currently in the process of updating it and hope to have it done by this fall. One reason in this discussion, for instance, you don't hear discussion about dairy farms and alfalfa fields and such, is we are a municipal water provider. So we address drought and water supply as it affects our service area and our customers. So we don't have agricultural customers within our service area, and we're not delivering that water. However, on the state level, they address, they're working on addressing agricultural water use more, and they're working with a larger group of stakeholders to see how farmers can help reduce water use. So I think it's being addressed, but you may not be hearing it as often on the local dialogue because we're focused, for instance, my job is focused fully on our water supply in our service area and finding strategies for sustaining that supply. But yeah, it's a factor. I mean, agricultural water use is about 85% of all the water in the state. So we need to address it, but it's not necessarily part of the construct of our drought plan.
Let me hop over to Luke and Marshall Allred on that question. Your particular departments or areas of expertise, how are you seeing climate change and this drought show up in, fire prevention and keeping public lands healthy?
You want me to go first or Luke to go first?
Sure, go ahead, Fire Marshal.
You guys,
All
go
right.
ahead. Go ahead.
From a global perspective, I know that as a industry, as a fire community in our country, over my 25 years on the job, we've gone from fire seasons. When we talk about wildfire, we don't talk about wildfire season anymore, especially in the West. We saw that moving from California. We've been on fires. We've sent assets out of state on wildland urban interface fires well into late fall and beginning early spring. We see wildfires and urban interface fires this year. I mean, we saw our first fires here in the valley early this spring because the grasses came up, dried, regreened, and so that's the difference we've seen. And when I discuss it with fire marshals and other fire chiefs around the country, like I said, there is no more planning a certain window of time in the year when we get these wildfire events. So that's the best I can tell you how it applies to us. Is we're year round expecting these types of events now.
Yeah, and I just before we hopped on here for the Ask Me Anything, President Biden spoke with the media today about this very topic, the West burning up, and essentially saying what you just said, Tony, is there is just no one season for fires anymore, and we all have to, come to terms with this. Luke, what about public lands? Obviously, another urban interface question about fire and climate change.
Sure. I think a lot of our parks in Salt Lake City were designed and built a long time ago before there was as much awareness and understanding of climate change as there is today. Over the last year or so, Public Lands has been developing a new public lands master plan, and we've been calling it the Reimagine Nature Master Plan. And you can learn more about that at reimaginenatureslc.com. But a big part of that master plan that we're developing is, how can we use our public lands in the future to, fight against climate change and also inspire our residents to take action so that in their day-to-day lives, they can also do things to slow down climate change. So, for example, I think over the next 5 to 10 years, I think a lot of our parks are going to start looking different because, like Stephanie said, there are better grasses to plant. So we're going to be planting those better grasses in our parks. We're going to be, redesigning certain areas of our parks to be more water-wise. Mayor Mendenhall has an initiative to plant 1,000 trees a year on the city's west side, in addition to other trees around the city. So we're strongly supporting that initiative to plant more trees in our city. So that's what I would say. I think this is really important to public lands, and we will be taking lots of actions over the next 5 to 10 years to really, reimagine and redesign a lot of our spaces to, help make Salt Lake City more climate resilient.
Great. And then for both Luke and Stephanie, I know both of our departments interact with the golf courses. And in terms of water-wise lawn or grass for the golf courses, are we talking about different lawn seed for the golf courses as well?
Luke, would you like me to take this one?
Sure.
So yes, we've been working with the golf department actually or golf division the last several years in conjunction with Utah State University and the U.S. Department of Agriculture to identify drought resilient grasses that could be used in naturalized and rough areas. We had very specific criteria about these grasses. They had to take foot traffic, they had to take golf carts, they had to be playable. So, and they had to be low to no water. But they also could not be invasive. And that was a really important criteria. And the USDA and USU helped us identify some interesting grass varieties, including a very short wheatgrass native to the Snake River area in Idaho, and also one native to Uzbekistan. And we have merged those two grasses in a blend, and we've planted out over, I think, 8 acres of this grass seed in Bonneville, at Bonneville Golf Course, Rose Park, and Glendale. So over the next couple of years, we'll be expanding these grass areas so that we can help maintain the natural character of these golf courses, but also greatly reduce the water footprint. They also worked with us and Utah State University to install 4 new weather stations and update a 5th one. So we have state-of-the-art research quality weather stations now in 5 sites throughout the service area that provide really high quality data for our facilities folks who are managing both our golf courses and our public lands, but also for any homeowner or commercial property that wants access to very good evapotranspiration and weather data to better improve their scheduling. So golf is, we've done a lot with golf, and there's more to come. It's all it's pretty exciting.
Have you anything to add to that, Luke, in terms of managing the golf courses in this drought?
I know our Trails and Natural Lands division has also been working with the golf division on similar projects to what Stephanie just explained. At Fairmount Park, there's a pond there called Fairmount Pond where we've planted a lot of native plant species to try to make our biodiversity of that park more resilient. And I know we're in early discussions with the golf division director to do similar things along the water areas of the golf courses. But again, those are relatively early on, but we are going to be putting a lot of efforts toward that moving forward.
Great, thank you. We have a question that came in from Polly on Facebook. Polly is wondering about whether the city is considering water rate hikes to discourage water usage, or at least encourage less water usage. Can someone speak to that? And I think that person is probably Stephanie Dewar.
Sure. Well, the utility is always considering water rate increases, in part because our costs are fixed, our community keeps growing, our infrastructure is always aging, and it always needs improving, updating, repairing, enhancing. So yeah, but when we talk about rate increases, we are typically talking about small increases that help us avoid larger costs later on. As far as the relationship between rate increases, though, and demand, actually, that's not a strong link. For the average, and there's a lot of research on this, there's a lot of study with economists throughout the country who are really, who are experts in this area, Tom Chestnut, Eva Opitz, who've looked at the relationship between rates and demand. And for the most part, you need about an 18% rate increase to affect a 1 to 2% decrease. What's more important than a rate increase is how we convey the information about what the water rate is and how much water a customer uses. Now, one way we do address rates and demand is we have 4 tiers. So when you use water, your rate of your bill or the rate of the unit of water depends on which tier you land in. One thing this does is for folks who use more water, they pay more. The other thing though, and this is really important when we talk about increasing rates, is we also have to make sure that we keep water affordable for all of our customers for essential uses. And this is really critical. We don't want to price people out of the ability to provide water for their family, to clean their home, to bathe, to do basic functions with water, to flush a toilet. So by having 4 tiers, that means we can keep the most essential water use as affordable as possible. This also helps with our, what this does is, anyway, we can't charge more water. We also have to, or more money. We also can't make a profit when we charge our rates. So by having these tiers, we can charge more water, more for some water in terms of higher water usage and less for lower water usage. But yes, it's important, but also providing information about water rates and information on people's bills is really important.
Yeah, and I think I should add, again, as a member of the team at Public Utilities, the rate structure isn't permanent the way it is. We go back about every 6 to 8 years and do a really exhaustive rate study, and the last one we did, and we had, I believe, Stephanie, it was like 35 people on the rate team or the rate study team, and people from across the board, private industry, residents, nonprofits, the school districts. I'm sure I'm leaving plenty of people out, but it is a really it's a lengthy and complex process, but we do everything we can. Our director, Laura Briefer, is very, very much into making sure that all portions of the community get represented in these rate setting discussions. And imagine we'll have another one in another 3 years or so. So they're constantly evolving, I'm trying to say. Thank you. And then we have a question here about, again, a 4th of July question that's going to go to Tony Allred. What is the 4th of July like for firefighters in a normal year? And what do we hope to see this year because of the fireworks restrictions?
I don't think it'll come as any surprise to anybody that 4th of July and President's Day weekend are very busy for us. Not only just on the wildland fire side, but the fire department provides emergency medical for the entire community. So anytime you have large gatherings, people getting together, it's just a busy time for us, and the time for us to get out in the community. Obviously, we put on extra resources specifically to address those threats that we've seen. So yeah, the short answer is busy, like you would expect. And from that aspect, it's not an unusual year. We get busy every year. What do we hope to see this year because of the restrictions? We hope to see that we have that we're able to respond to all those other types of emergencies that come up in a timely manner, and that our resources aren't stretched by an unusually large number and size of wildland interface issues. Remember, those units, those fire engines that are run into those wildland urban interface fires and protected homes, those are the same engines we rely upon to go to the call for a heart attack or the call for a stroke victim or to car accidents. And so anytime those systems are stressed, it results in increased call times to get to those other calls. And we have a lot of measures in place within the fire department and how we respond to try to adapt and reflex to those when our resources get stressed. But we can only stretch our resources so far, just like any community. So I'm hoping, we have, fortunately in Salt Lake City, we have a particular, our citizens are particularly good at stepping up when the fire department asks our citizens to partner with us, whether it be by, being our eyes and ears in the community, reporting things before they get big, or just, choosing this year, to be okay and help the fire department and help your neighbors and just go to a fireworks show instead of doing your traditional fireworks display in the old circle in the neighborhood. And so, I personally, I want to thank you to our citizens that are willingly stepping up and just changing their behavior a little bit this year.
Fire Marshal, just to follow up on that, I was at the press conference that Mayor Mendenhall held a couple of weeks ago discussing the fireworks prohibition, and many of the reporters, which of course is their job, asked some rather skeptical questions about our ability to enforce infractions. Like, you guys are, you people at the fire department are very, very overwhelmed this time of year, as you've already mentioned. It needs, how serious do you take a phone call from someone that their neighbor is, firing off bottle rockets or whatnot? How seriously should people take our prohibition and that it's really going to be enforced?
We're going to do our very best to enforce it. We're going to have additional resources on, like so many communities across the valley do. And we always have additional resources on because, every year a large portion of the city has this exact restriction in place. The benches, the central city corridor, the avenues. So these are not new restrictions from a fireworks standpoint for a lot of the community. And I go back to what I said, we will have additional enforcement. We are taking it very seriously. The threat of a citation for violating the ban is very real. I approach it more from a education standpoint and just a compliance standpoint. And we have, from just getting out in the community and talking to our citizens, they share our concern and they believe us when we tell them that it's a real threat this year. And, we rely on the citizens to help us and then not stress our systems. And so I think those two things working together, increased enforcement and just the education we will provide, and just the nature of Salt Lake City residents to pitch in when their fire department asks for some help. I have a lot of hope that we're going to be able to avoid having more fires than we would have otherwise.
And Luke, do you know, in terms of parks, professional displays of fireworks this year, we have some scheduled, right?
Yeah, that's a great question, Holly. There are 2 professional firework displays on the calendar for this year. The first one is Sunday, July 4th at Jordan Park. And the second one is Saturday, July 24th at Liberty Park. And both of those shows will start shortly after sundown and will last around 15 minutes. And if you go to slcityevents.com, that's slcityevents.com, there's more information about both of those professional firework displays.
That's great, thank you. A question about talking a little bit more about the restrictions this time of year for fire prevention. We have a question that says, what really counts as open burning? Is my barbecue at home okay to use? And can I use sparklers? Tony.
Yeah, rather than read you a boring definition from the fire code about what is the definition of an outdoor fire or a recreational fire. Yeah, we're not asking people to not have hot dogs and hamburgers and those types of things on 4th of July. We're just not. Those type of cooking implements out on your patio are safe. They're commercial. They're designed for that. They're designed to be used for what they're used for, as long as they're used safely. Keep them clear of other combustibles. Make sure your propane grill is in good working order. That's not our concern. I know you cited sprinklers or sparklers. Sparklers are a firework, and we go on many fires a year started by sparklers. So they're a restricted item. Basically, any of the fireworks you buy, that aren't anything that's sold can only be sold during that window of time before the 4th of July and after the 4th of July, and before the 24th. Those are all restricted items in the city right now. So, but no, I'm not going to be the guy that asks our citizens, you know, not to invite their neighbors over for and get to know their friends and neighbors for a barbecue, especially coming out of the year we've had. So that's not going to be me.
Yeah, you Grinches over there at the fire department.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, that's great. What about in a more general discussion back to the drought? Luke talked or showed his slides about the ways that parks and public lands have been cutting back on water use. What else are city properties and city departments doing? Stephanie, perhaps you know, or any of you can speak to help us through this drought.
Well, one thing we've been doing is working closely with all parks, facilities, and property managers that are governmental agencies, not just Salt Lake City, but remember Cottonwood Heights, Mill Creek and Murray, or Mill Creek and Holiday, to work with them also to reduce their water footprint on their properties. We're working with, we're also addressing conservation throughout the city in terms of working more closely with our commercial customers directly and working with other government agencies throughout the valley here, the Wasatch Front, to make sure we have coordinated messages, which is really important, and that we're working together and sort of trying to make sure that we're all sharing the same language. The other thing we're doing, there's some really important conservation programs that are coming up. One is a program called Water Maps, and Water Maps will allow us to do an analysis of landscapes and compare actual landscape water need based on analyzed aerial photography, and compare that to billing data to know how much a property is over or under watering. So fairly soon we'll be able to deliver very specific information to all of our customers, whether they're residential, commercial, or institutional, about how much water they need to provide to their landscape and how much might be able to be reduced, or our ability to, how much water we can conserve on those landscapes and still maintain them. And that's a really, that's been an exciting project we're working on with Utah State University, and we're very near to being able to launch it. And that will give us a clearer picture of the capacity to conserve within all of our landscapes across our entire service area. And so mostly what we're doing is working with all city divisions, all departments, and business community for everyone to do what they know they're supposed to do, and be on top of how we're using water and managing leaks and communicating this information out to the community.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. I've been actually impressed, and I know our citywide civic engagement group spends time on some of the Nextdoor pages. There's a lot of conversation going on the Nextdoor app about the drought, not surprisingly. One thing I see a lot, and Stephanie, maybe you can address this, people are genuinely concerned about whether our drinking water supply will last throughout the summer.
Yeah.
Do you have information about that, whether we're in danger?
We have adequate water for our current needs for drinking and for some carryover. But what we need to be mindful of is that carryover water. The more water we can keep in storage this year, the more resilient we are if the drought continues into the year or the year after. The water we receive from the Jordanelle Deer Creek system, which is the water that comes in from the Upper Colorado River Basin, CUP manages a Central Utah project. That's the CUP water. Agencies that receive water from that are getting their full allocations this year, but that's this year. So really, when we're talking about conservation and drought right now, it's not only being mindful in this moment, but thinking about every time you turn on a tap now, that's also potentially depleting water sources for next year. So it's really important that we're mindful now, even though we will have adequate water to drink, but and for essential purposes, we need to be really thoughtful about how we use water, and we need to not waste a drop.
Thanks, Stephanie. We're getting a little bit tight on time, but we do have one more question just related to, there are people, I'm sure, well, we know there are people in the community who don't have have access to perhaps air conditioning or, the comforts that we need during the drought. Can any of you speak about where people can go to keep cool on these really hot days? I know the weekend's going to be very hot again. And what are the signs of a heat-related illness? I bet that's a good fire department question.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Holly. You're going to make me reach back into my paramedic days here in the city, but I'd be happy to speak to that. The Salt Lake County manages the cooling centers here in the Valley, Salt Lake County Health Department. You can actually go to our emergency management website and get information on that, or just reach out to Salt Lake County. Their website's very accessible, but they do manage in these high heat times some cooling centers. There's some other options. Your vulnerability to heat stroke and heat exhaustion, which is kind of the tier down from that, really depends from person to person. People with pre-existing conditions, elderly, otherwise ill, are obviously particularly susceptible. The city has a great network of senior centers, as does the county maintain them. So, spend time in the community centers. And what we tell people year to year is just watch your neighbor. If you see someone struggling, if you see someone's behavior changing, obviously the point where their weakness, if someone stops sweating and their mentation is different, they just seem different, that's a 911 issue. And if their question arises, that's what the Salt Lake City Fire Department is for. Those emergency services will come, evaluate someone you're concerned about, evaluate you if you're concerned, and get you the resources you need, whether that be referral to a cooling center or an emergency room visit or something in between. That's what we're here for.
Great.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and I think, people may not realize, that these heat-related heat exhaustion and certainly heat stroke can creep up on you pretty fast. It's even better to hydrate a day or two out if you're going to be out in the sun a lot for a particular day or outing or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have come up against the clock. So I'm wondering if the three of you have anything else you'd like to add as we close this conversation. Start with Luke. Can we?
Sure, I'll just reiterate two things I said earlier. First, we really appreciate the public's help in identifying any water issues in our parks or other public spaces. If you see a broken sprinkler or a leaking drinking fountain, don't just assume we know about it. Please give us a call so that we can deal with that as soon as we can. And that number is 801-972-7800. And the second thing is, it's really important to us that our public lands can be a tool for fighting climate change and being drought resilient in the future. And a big part of our plan to do that is being developed within our Reimagine Nature Salt Lake City Public Lands Master Plan. We're about 2/3 the way done developing that plan, but there will be one more window for public feedback this fall. So please follow us on social media or visit reimaginatureslc.com to get involved with that process.
How about you, Stephanie? Any closing parting shots?
Just that we need all of our customers, residential, commercial, and institutional, to help us right now to be mindful about how water is used, to not waste water. And if you have questions or don't know how to achieve this, whether you're a resident, a business, or an institutional partner, you're welcome to contact me, either call or by email. And you can find information on our website, which is slc.gov/utilities/conservation.
Thank you. And finally, Fire Marshal Tony Allred, any closing comments today?
Just mainly to continue what Luke and Stephanie said, we really appreciate the willingness of our residents and visitors to pitch in and support the fire department and recognize the threat this year and do their part to minimize that threat and to be our eyes and ears in the community. I mean, we really rely on that, and I can't thank our citizens and visitors enough.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you to everyone. Thank you to our team today here, our team of experts, for some great information and education. I want to make sure that the audience knows that this event or this program will be available in several different ways. You can go to our Salt Lake City YouTube channel, our Facebook page, which is how you viewed this today, and also SLC TV. This will be available for indeterminate amount of time. If you want to go back and re-listen or shoot this out to friends or family members, we'd love to have that happen. And thank you again for joining us. And we'll be putting more information out in the future about our next Ask Me Anything. Thanks and have a great day.